Welcome to the JAMODI Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders, so let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
The JAMODI Podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
That was one of the things that I was thinking about today. It was like, it was one of your questions. It was like, how do you deal with defeat, right? Or how do you deal with failure? And that one really like jogged some things, because I think it is the best teacher. I think it's probably one thing that we get to teach over and over. We get to do that. That's like part of our job. It's like, some coaches like, man, well, hey, if we lose, I want them to, this, and they're going to know that that's not our standard. And I think it's almost like, hey, that's the one thing. I mean, like between you and I, man, I took a lot of L's, man, right? We've won a lot of games, but we took some hard ones. We played Seagoville that first year. I was at Timberview getting the playoffs, and we won a playoff game that year, man. It was one of the most proudest moments. We got in. We had the ninth grade B teamers from Summit and Mansfield High, and they get in, right? So we get in, and Seagoville had Sloan and who was the other guard? I mean, the one went to A&M, and one of them ended up playing for the Pacers. They're loaded. It was the year after they had the big guy. They beat us 50 at Duncanville High School. They beat us 100 to 50. That was our loss. 50-point loss, right? 50. And luckily we came back the next year, we get them again, and they beat us 7, right? But it's the embracing of the defeat. It's the using the teaching of the defeat, because you don't get something until you experience it. Eric McDade doesn't change unless he goes through some experiences, whether it's in his health, whether it's in his life, finances, family. He doesn't change unless it's brought on through those experiences where he has to adjust. It's the same thing in this game, thing in the game. The experiences cause the change in behaviors.
I think there's two things that really show what your culture is of your program, way beyond words on a wall that like we have in our locker room, sayings on back of shirts like we have on our shirts, things that we say in practice, way beyond that. How do you deal with shot selection and how you deal with losing? I think those two things really show me what our culture is, because I could say all the guys, we're about excellence, and we're going to have humility. We're going to have enthusiasm every day, and we're going to bring toughness, and we're going to be about the process. We're going to be 1-0 today, better. But then after a loss, I'm losing my stuff. And I'm letting today carry over to tomorrow. And I'm starting to say things that are not what is like, instead of uplifting language that inspires, I'm demeaning and tearing down. That says more about our culture than in those moments where we're pretending everything's going to work out. And then how you deal with shot selection says a lot about it too. You really want them to be courageous? You really want them to take chances? How do you deal with shot selection? So I think those two things are, you touched on those. Tell us a lot about where our programs are.
Yeah, that's so good what you're saying right there. It's like it's almost what people see versus what they hear, right? People do what they see, not necessarily what they hear. As leaders, we have to model the behaviors that we want to see from our players, right? If I'm cool, calm, collected in the heated moments, they're going to learn to be that way, because they're going to find comfort that I'm not freaking out. If they know that tomorrow, in 30 years of coaching, I tell the guys this all the time. I get up the next morning, maybe after loft. So Dwayne Gregory, that's my buddy, right? So Dwayne was an assistant when I was a player at Concordia. Dwayne and I opened Timberview together.
Wow.
We had a great journey. He's still one of my closest friends. And we had those losses, and we'd come in that office and he'd go, well, sun rose up again, didn't it? So that's our coined phrase, right? We come in the next day after that tough loss. Whoa, can you believe it? I can't believe this. They're like, Coach, what is it? I can't believe it. Last night we lose that game. And I'm thinking there's no way in the world we're going to have another day and the sun was actually going to rise and we're going to get to live again. Well, we're breathing and we're walking. And they all kind of chuckle a little bit. And then there's times where it's maybe a little bit more remorse, you know. Those seniors just lost their last game. They're coming in that next day and we're going to process them and we're going to celebrate them. And how are we going to do that? How are we going to make this that, yeah, we lost. But you know what? More important than the loss, we value you and everything that you've given us, right? Sometimes people, you have to read people. You have to see where they are. You have to know, are they bruised or are they wounded? Because there's a difference. Wounds are deep. If there's all they've ever experienced is as loss and you're coming in as a new coach and you're trying to change that culture, you got to find a way to deal with these kids that are wounded because they're already in a certain place and you're trying to get them out of there. You come into a place and you've got some guys that have had a lot of success. My first job, Matt, nobody knows this story. I was 26 years old. 26 years old. I was sitting on a couch the year before I was assistant at A&M Consolidated, and I was upset because I didn't get a job that I thought I wanted at 25. I'm sorry, 25. Like I was ready, right? I was ready. So I get a cold call from Coach Cody, and he calls me up. And he says, hey, you know, my daughter is married to one of your teammates from high school. And when you were in Denison, and the Colony was in our district. So I know Coach Thomas.
Yes.
Yeah, he coached that matchup. But anyway, so we get to going, and he invites me for a job. So I move up there, and there's a young lady that lives up that direction. So I get a little closer to her. We end up married. So I get married, and he pushes me out the door after being there 1 year. And the year before, I had, Lord, why? Why didn't you let me get that job? I won't say the school. But he turns around, and I land in this job at Crowley High School where they had just won a state championship the year before at age 26. That ain't supposed to happen like that. And you have to be careful what you ask for. So I walk into a job where there's a returning state MVP, where they're loaded to bear, where North Crowley is now in their second year of being opened, and they're in our district, and they're loaded with 3 or 4 Division I basketball players. And we finished third in that league, or second in that league, because I think 3 went, and first place got a bye. So we get into it, and we go on a run, and I wasn't ready for that job. And those kids, they needed someone that would guide them along. They didn't need me coming in there trying to be who I had just worked for, right? And so that we have to discover who we are. I say all that to the point where you have to know your players. You have to recognize what their needs are. And then our job is to fill in the voids. Here's a thought right here. Thought about this today. Had a friend share this with me this morning. He says, what are you trying to fill your voids with as a coach? What are you trying to fill your voids with? Okay? If you're helping somebody, and our job as coaches is to help. If you're helping somebody and you're expecting something in return, that's a business transaction. But if you're helping somebody and you don't expect anything in return, that's called being kindness. That's probably called being a mentor. That's probably called being a teacher, right? And sometimes we have to look at it for what it is, and we may not be fully equipped, but we can be on that growth journey ourselves, because I wasn't equipped for that job. But we can be on those growth journeys. So there's a lot of situations where I feel like God has put me in places where I wasn't ready for it. And I was insecure and just had to learn my way through it and be open to that and just know that it was going to be better later on. Just be a good person. That's sometimes all you can be. You may not have the tools in your tool belt.
That's good. I don't know if that ever stops. Maybe that little voice in your head that does doubt whether I'm good enough, I'm capable of, I'm qualified to do what I'm doing. And then whether you are a person of faith or not, that's where a belief that you are where you're supposed to be for a purpose. God's put those people in this gym this season for a reason. And all I have to do is have my eyes open to see what that is. So you're talking about knowing if players are wounded or bruised. And I love the idea of that. And Coach, you've said so many, I love getting to do this, man, because you've said so many things that have really made me think of just about how I can be better for my guys for such a time as this, not the future, but the wounded and bruised. How do you know the difference? How do you get to know that about them?
Well, I think we can trick ourselves. I think we can trick ourselves into thinking things are better than what they are. We can also trick ourselves into thinking that things are worse. And I'm not talking about wins and losses and success. I'm talking about people's station in lives. I think you learn this from kids. I had a kid one time, he told me this, and he wasn't happy. And his mom came in after the game, and I was doing a typical coach thing, right? So we, as coaches, we do things. And there's things that I'm not proud of. We do things. There was a kid that was playing for me, and I was playing him, and he didn't need to be a starter. There was a kid that was behind him that needed to be the starter, but I was playing him because he was a grade older, and I put him out there because I thought that would appease it a little bit, but then I would insert the other kid. But I got into a rhythm and a pattern, and people aren't dumb. They knew it, and they approached me about it, and the kid knew it, and he couldn't get into a groove and all this different kind of stuff. And I said, well, man, if you weren't happy, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you come talk to me instead of getting mom involved and she's all fired up after the game and everything like that? And I said, because you're a starter. And he goes, Coach, I just put a mask on. You have to know where you are, right? You're going to be in some environments where the people you serve may be really good at projecting and putting these masks on and being able to say the right things. But we have to go into, I call what we do is soul work, right? This is deep work. This is getting into the core of people, right? And the only way you can lean into that, obviously, is through prayer and staying close to the word and just understanding things and understanding where you are in your own mistake and understanding why they would project, who are they trying to serve, what are they trying to achieve. People, we are flawed, man. You know that. We're flawed, man. And nothing is ever perfect. And the only way we can lean into that wounded or into that bruise is to really dive into it. And we may not ever know, but we can only have the assumption that no matter where we are, people have issues and they have needs, right? And we all are just a little bit broken. All of us, even the coach, right? But boy, what's really cool is that we can be each other's glue, and we start putting all those little pieces together and helping each other out. But you have to assume that everybody needs something. Nobody, even the one that looks like he's got it all together, there's something. And I think if we're intentionally intentional and we keep our lens and our eyes open and we have conversations and we build trust, sometimes you just have to ask people and they'll be surprised what they'll tell you.
I think you're right on the money. It definitely is intentional time. Because to think that you'll just get to know your guys by and hoping it happens, hope is rarely a good strategy. And we don't want our players to base their game on hope. Josh Stewart is a coach that is he coached at Lodge Grass High School in Montana on a Indian reservation. And he was talking about one of the most damaging phrases that we can say as coaches is fake it until you make it. The idea of faking it till you make it, I've said it, I don't know how many times. Guys, listen, I know we're a little tired today. We got to fake it till you make it. Hey, spirit and enthusiasm isn't for everybody every day, and there's going to be days where you feel more. When you don't have it, we don't feel it, man, fake it, and at some point you'll make it. He said we got to stop telling kids to fake it, because that is, you nailed it, that's the mask. We're teaching them to not be real. And so he said, instead of faking, he said, we're going to throw that out, never again. We're always going to face it until we make it. Face it till we make it. Whatever is difficult in our lives, we're going to have those conversations, those tough conversations, and we're going to be okay with being real and authentic. We're not going to worry about what are the twin thieves. The twin thieves are judgment and failure, fear of judgment, fear of failure. Man, we're going to face those twin thieves head on. The story you just talked about and getting to know those players, or not story, but the ideas, that idea of facing it, I think is something. Let's outlaw that fake it till you make it stuff that I've said a bunch of times. And you know what? In my marriage, I need to face it. In parenting, I need to face it. When I'm coaching players, we need to face difficult times. And hopefully that helps somebody.
Yeah, man, that's so good. That's so good. Hey, you know what? Can I just affirm you, man? What you're doing right now? There's such a light, Matt. There's kids that are coming in to coaching. I'm sitting right now with a former player that is on my staff. He's 26 years old. Played for me at Carroll. Got another young man that's about 34 years old. Got 4 kids, beautiful little family. Got another young man that's in his early 30s, another one in his 20s. This right here, if we're not careful, they got so many streams of information that come at them. It's things like this, right? It's like this conversation that you and I are having, that used to actually take place with, coaches sitting at, down at the state tournament, wherever it is, we're chopping it up. We're talking about these things, and you're keeping it alive, man. You're keeping it alive. That's so good that this is there for everybody to enjoy and to glean off of. And man, I'm just humble. I appreciate you. I'm humbled you to let me come in here and visit, run my mouth for a little bit.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.